Israeli airstrikes have killed dozens of Palestinians over the last 24 hours, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Israel said it struck Hamas targets after the militia group fired on its troops. It provided no evidence to back those claims. Earlier this week, the UN Security Council approved what US President Donald Trump called a peace plan for Gaza. It calls for an international stabilization force to demilitarize and govern Gaza.
Security is the oxygen that governance, that development needs to live and to thrive. The International Stabilization Force will stabilize the security environment, support the demilitarization of Gaza, dismantle terrorist infrastructure, decommission weapons, and maintain the safety of Palestinian civilians.
For the latest in Gaza, let's bring in our panel. Joining us from Oklahoma is Joshua Landis. He's the director of the Center for Middle East Studies at the University of Oklahoma. Also with us from Washington, D.C., Khalil Sayegh is a political analyst and executive director of the Agora initiative. And from London, we're joined by Yossi Mekelberg. He is a senior consulting fellow with the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House. Thanks, everyone, for being with us. Yossi Mekelberg, the Israeli Defense Forces killed at least 32 Palestinians, including women and children, injured dozens more in the last 24 hours. In fact, since the ceasefire was announced, Israel has killed at least 312 Palestinians. That's according to Palestinian authorities. Looking at these numbers, what does this tell you about the durability of this ceasefire and Israel's commitment to it? Would it be fair to say that at this stage, if we look at it from the Palestinian point of view, that it's a ceasefire in name only?
There is a ceasefire, but it's far from being perfect. And you would expect that if there is a genuine ceasefire, no one is killed. We knew from the outset that this is a fragile ceasefire, and it needs international monitoring any step of the way. There is some monitoring mechanism from international one from within Israel, but it doesn't seem to provide the kind of assurances the Palestinians need at the moment. I think the basic problem here is that still Gaza, 52% plus of Gaza is still in the hands of the Israeli military force. As long as there is this kind of friction there, I'm afraid that the ceasefire will never be complete. That's what you mentioned earlier, the need for the international stabilization force, that the urgency of this is shown by this level of killing to ensure that this is not happening. You need Israel to withdraw completely from Gaza and as quickly as possible, and ensure there is not only peacekeeping operation, but the peace enforcement operation operating there.
Khalil Sayegh, let's talk a little bit more about that plan that was approved by the United Nations Security Council. President Trump, as I said, calls it a peace plan. China and Russia, I should add, abstained from the vote. China called the plan vague, said it fails to fully reflect essential principles such as Palestinian self-rule in Palestine and the two-state solution. In fact, the Chinese ambassador to the United Nations said it is lacking in many respects. It is vague, it is unclear. The Palestinian Authority accepted that vote, in fact praised the resolution. Is this a positive step? How do you see it?
Definitely the Palestinian Authority and the Arab countries saw it as a positive step because it contains some, although vague, but a mention of a two-state solution, of a future, even return to the Palestinian Authority to Gaza, etc. And it also, contain elements about future stabilization, disarmament of Hamas, all of which the Arabs agreed to. That being said, it is far from perfect for the very same reasons that it's really vague. It's vague what takes to lead to a Palestinian state. It's vague what it takes to lead to the Palestinian Authority to return to Gaza. In addition to the fact that it's more or less divide between Gaza and the West Bank. At this point, it leaves Gaza away from the rest of the Palestinian territories. All of these are dangerous elements to it. But also, like when it comes to security, it is beyond, even vagueness, that the mention of, stabilization force, etc., because we've known before that many Arab countries, including the King of Jordans and others, have mentioned that we would not be going to Gaza to disarm Hamas ourselves and to take this on ourselves. So I think the maximum the international community could expect from international Arab forces that are, from Arab countries and Muslim countries is to be there as a force keeping to support a Palestinian government of some sort. But for them to come to Gaza and disarm Hamas and perhaps even clash with them, I think that this is not a reality and not something that will happen. And therefore, I think that the hopes are too high for this plan. But in reality, I don't think it will be implemented as it was written.
Joshua Landis, talking about reality, the resolution does call for that international stabilization force to enter, demilitarize and govern Gaza. At this stage, it is unclear what happens to that 52% of Gaza that is still controlled, occupied by the Israelis. The Jerusalem Post has reported that the first international troops are expected to arrive in Gaza in early 2026. That's just a couple of months away. Realistically, Joshua, do you see this deployment taking place?
Well, nothing is clear. As your other guests have said, this resolution really defies all the principles of the United Nations because there is no self-determination for the Palestinians in this. There is some wording about a pathway to a two-state, to a self-government of some kind, but Prime Minister Netanyahu quickly batted that aside and said there will not be a Palestinian state. The Israeli ambassador to the UN said this is a check that the Palestinians will never be able to cash. So there really is no hope for Palestinian self-determination, and there are no Palestinians in the room. There is a command center that's been set up in Israel that has Americans in it and Israelis in it and other Arab intelligence officers, but no Palestinians, no representation from the Palestinian Authority, and certainly no Hamas, obviously. So it's very unclear. This is going to be President Trump, in theory, who is going to be the commander of Gaza. But even so, Israeli military has not conceded authority to this new command center. So the two are talking in many ways at cross purposes. The Palestinian Authority has set up its own plan for aid getting into Gaza and for reconstruction, but it's nowhere to be seen. And Prime Minister Netanyahu had said that it shouldn't have any role in this because he doesn't want to see the empowerment of the Palestinian Authority, which could eventually lead to a two-state solution.
Right, Joshua, there are those who say the plan is not perfect, but it is a step. But there are critics who say putting an international force on the ground effectively imposes foreign guardianship over Gaza, undermining, as you point out, Palestinian self-determination, and the establishment of this board of peace raises questions about who really controls Gaza. Is it going to be President Trump who's going to be the commander of this territory? In effect, has the United Nations handed Gaza over to foreign ownership? Is it just another colonial enterprise?
It does seem that that's the case. And, interestingly, both China and Russia abstained from this. And I think, they've thrown up their hands because they understand that America owns this issue and Israel really owns it. And the two of them have their own idea about how they're going to, about the future of the Palestinians, and that the international community is really quite powerless, and the UN is powerless in this. And that seems to be what the international community is saying in this vote, is that they can't see any other future. This is a complete defeat in many ways for the Palestinians and for any self-determination. So we'll see what comes out of it, and it's unclear what's going to. But I think what we've seen in the last month is that 300 Palestinians have been killed. 3 Israeli soldiers have been killed since the October ceasefire, and that's a bad sign for the future.
Yossi, Mekelberg, what is your view on this plan? I mean, do you see it coming to fruition? Are the Israelis going to relinquish control of even a part of Gaza to foreign troops?
I agree with the previous speakers. One of the main the disadvantages or flaws in this plan, that it's not a plan as we see what should be a plan. There are no deadlines, there are no details. Those are some sort of declaration of principles, what you like to achieve, and the end goal that should be a Palestinian state, a peace agreement based on a two-state solution, is the vaguest of all the ideas there, which indicates to me that no one has learned anything for what has happened not only in the last 2 years, but even before, but especially in the last 2 years. What happens when you leave a conflict to fester, you don't resolve the root causes of that, and as a result of it, we see what has happened. Having said that, to more specifically about your question, right now the discourse in Israel, unfortunately, especially among the Zionist parties, is that a Palestinian state is not on the table. Israel actually entered last month in the election year, and there is only the parties that represent the Palestinian citizens of Israel speak about a two-state solution. The best that you can hear from some of the parties, the more liberal progressive, that they look for some sort of separation, but they won't actually utter the word a Palestinian state. Obviously, for the more extreme parties, as far as you go to the religious messianic one, they would like to annex the West Bank. They wanted to annex Gaza as well. So in this kind of, if the debate won't include a serious discussion about a two-state solution, meaning a Palestinian state, I'm afraid we are staying in the same place.
So Yossi, as you point out, and as our other panelists have pointed out as well, there is a lack of clarity in this resolution and what happens in the future. Is there going to be a two-state solution? But as far as the Israeli government is concerned, it is very clear. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insists there will be no Palestinian state. In fact, in September, he announced that they will move ahead with a settlement expansion plan that's for the occupied West Bank. And the far-right security, at least finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, said settlements like the one that they just announced at that time will erase Palestinians from the map. So is Israel just going along with this plan as just to placate the United States and other countries that have criticized its policies?
Let's not delude ourselves. Not this prime minister, not his coalition partners are actually partners for peace. This should be, I think, by now clear to everyone. The best hope that we can have about a genuine peace process that leads to a peace agreement based on a two-state solution, self-determination for Palestinians, is based that the next election would bring a different government. It's not a magic wand, because as I said earlier, no party is ready right now, prepared to suggest to the electorate in Israel that a two-state solution, they won't put in their platform. But I think they are more susceptible to this, and it will bring a change, even if a slow one. But I mean, between now and the next election, all what can be done is for the international community to set the foundation, to put the pressure that the situation won't be aggravated by building more settlements, building E1 that separate between West Bank and Jerusalem. And also, I think we need to emphasize that the violence against Palestinians by settlers, Jewish terrorism, is getting worse by the day.
Right. Khalil, I've just got a little bit of time left, but there was a piece in the Wall Street Journal, which is a conservative newspaper, a right-wing newspaper, often supportive of Israel and President Trump. It said that Hamas is gaining in popularity in Gaza because it is maintaining security, and it has brought an end to crime, including looting. How does that complicate the plans to disarm Hamas?
It definitely complicates the plans, and I think Hamas understood this since the beginning, is that in reality, what you want to do is to agree on principles to disarm and to even, like, relinquish power in Gaza, but in the ground, you just build facts on the grounds, and these facts on the grounds would make it hard for the Americans and for the Israelis to demand that you would be disarmed completely. A Hamas leader went on Jazeera about 2 weeks ago, Osama Hamdan, and he said, that if we disarm in Gaza, there would be a chaos and this would be bad for the settlements. And he asked, what is the danger of Hamas arms in Gaza? The arms that are dangerous to Israel, we are willing to get rid of. Just keep us our small arms so we can keep the Israeli kibbutzim around Gaza safe. He literally said that. So that goes to show you that Hamas is interested in staying there. They're trying to create facts on the ground and trying to negotiate in a way that says we are even willing to guarantee the security of Israel as long as you allow us to keep ruling Gaza.
Right. Joshua Landis, this resolution that was approved in the United Nations Security Council is legally binding right now. So what is the onus on all sides to abide by it?
Well, the UN had their own resolution, which they scrapped. And this is the American resolution. Everybody agreed to it. And I think they did because President Trump is seen as the person who stopped Netanyahu's assault on Gaza. And therefore, they see the only hope is that he will take a personal interest in making something work. Otherwise, we're going to just slip back into what we had before. Because I think it's quite clear that Israel does not want the Palestinians to rebuild and establish some kind of entity that could become a state. And so it's going to really be up to the President of the United States to keep focused on this and to make something happen.
Okay, that's where we have to leave it. Joshua Landis, Khalil Sayegh, and Yossi Mekelberg, thanks to all of you for being with us. In the occupied West Bank, Palestinian civilians are being brutally attacked and displaced by illegal settlers and Israeli occupation forces. The United Nations says Israelis carried out at least 264 attacks on Palestinians in October, an all-time one-month high. Almost daily, settlers have torched vehicles, vandalized homes and destroyed olive farms in an effort to destroy Palestinian livelihoods. Joining us now from Ramallah is Xavier Abu Ei. He's a political scientist and a former advisor to the Palestine Liberation Organization. And Leila Al-Sheikh is a writer, activist, and member of the Parents Circle Families Forum, a joint Israeli-Palestinian organization. She joins us from Bethlehem. Thanks to both of you for being with us. Leila, let me start with you. As I said, there have been a record number of attacks by illegal settlers against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. The United Nations reports that 1,500 incidents took place just this year. What can you tell us about these attacks and why are they escalating right now?
In fact, this kind of attack, it could happen every 5 minutes in a different area. Like just 4 days ago, a village near to us been attacked by group of settlers, and they're encouraged by the Israeli soldiers. And if the Palestinians tried to defend themselves, they could, the Israeli soldiers could maybe arrest them or even kill them. There is no other reason for this violence, but I think after the 7th of October, Ben-Gvir give them a green light to do whatever they want. He give them a gun, he give them everything that they need just to do whatever they want to attack the Palestinian, because all the people around the world, they just care about what happened in Israel and the Gaza Strip, but nobody pay attention to the West Bank. So because of that, the violence become more and more every day.
Xavier, Israel is coming under pressure from some of its close allies, from the United States as well as the countries of the European Union, to stop these attacks. But when we look at what Israel is saying and what Israel is doing, they seem to be two different things. The Israeli Prime Minister said the settlers must be brought to justice, but as Leila just told us right now, the settlers are being encouraged by Israeli troops themselves. I mean, have you seen any justice? In fact, last year, the Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, he handed out thousands of weapons to settlers.
John, and I think it's very difficult to analyze what's going on here if we're going to base ourselves on whatever Mr. Netanyahu says. and then we have to separate whatever he says in English and whatever he says in Hebrew. In fact, even what he said in English, it incentivizes Israeli projects within the occupied West Bank. He refers to the occupied West Bank as Judea and Samaria, which is a biblical term to incentivize colonization. Now, what I would say is that the issue of whether there is justice or not may not be the case. Why? Because we're talking about a system, and settlers are part of this system. Settlers are pushing Israeli government policy, which includes ethnic cleansing and colonization of the occupied Palestinian territory. Settlers are part of the Israeli government. Itamar Ben-Gvir, you just mentioned, is an illegal settler in the southern area of the occupied West Bank, and I think it would also be a mistake to consider that whatever Israel is doing in the West Bank is separate to whatever they are doing in Gaza. In fact, if the plans for ethnic cleansing had succeeded in the amount they wanted to in Gaza, we all knew that the second stage would have been the West Bank, where we already have over 50,000 people displaced.
Leila, the United Nations says there are 3,200 Palestinians who have been forcibly displaced by the colonist occupiers. Israel has a long history of expanding settlements, as we are fully aware. These are all illegal under international law. And these forcible displacements that I'm talking about, how does it affect the day-to-day lives of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank?
What the international law, first, let me say, like, Israel listen or do everything according to the international law. They didn't listen to anyone. They do whatever they want to destroy the life of the Palestinian. Like in my village now, they tried to build 2 new settlements, and nobody could stop them. Nobody even spoke about that. Just today, I read about another settlement will be established in Bethlehem, but nobody talk about that too, and that will destroy the life of the Palestinian, because after the 7th of October, now they start to put new gates in front of every village, in front of every city, to make the Palestinian territories like cages to protect the settlers and the settlement. And this is what they said. And they said that the Palestinians could attack the settlers, but this is what happened in the opposite way. The settlers, every day they attack the Palestinians, and nobody seems care about that. Nobody do anything to improve the life of the Palestinian. Like after the 7th of October, it's not just about the settlers and the settlement. Even after the 7th of October, the West Bank still under closure. And that means that all the people who work inside Israel, they lost their jobs. Most of the children and the students couldn't go to their schools or to their university because of the settlers, because of these gates. They try to destroy the life of the Palestinian every day in every way that they could. And if they have this new settlement, it will be reason for them to find excuse for everything that they want to do.
Xavier, in addition to the thousands of Palestinians who are being pushed off their land, who are being displaced, Israel's also been attacking farmers and their farms. Olive orchards have been attacked. This is a mainstay of the Palestinian agricultural economy. What impact is that having?
It certainly has a huge impact, and the amount or the share that agriculture used to have in the Palestinian GDP has decreased almost entirely. And then you have to think about other elements, because it's not just like Palestinians are being pushed away from their farms, but it's actually Israeli settlers that are taking over Palestinian agricultural lands, and they are making very good use of it. For example, if you consider the Israeli exports of dates, over 50% of them are from the occupied Palestinian territory, particularly from the Jordan Valley. They have export of herbs, for example, around 80% come also from the occupied West Bank. So eventually, when they target the farmers, they are targeting on one side the economy, but also they are targeting the Palestinian social fabric. And we have many villages that have a long history, centuries old, much older than the State of Israel or the Zionist movement, to be precise, that they are being denied of their own traditions and their own land. And in several cases, those people they just have to immigrate, either to cities or outside the country, which is exactly what Israeli policies are pushing for.
Leila, my colleague Asiya Namda, she spoke to you about a year ago about your involvement in the organization that I mentioned in the introduction, the Parents Circle Families Forum. This is a group that comprises Israelis and Palestinians who believe in reconciliation. Do you believe that after all that's taken place, especially over the past 2 years, what a UN panel has called a genocide in Gaza, that the two sides, Israelis and Palestinians, can put their differences aside and build a common future?
First, I think that will happen one day. We didn't know when, we didn't know how, but this occupation will end one day. And I think one day we will find a way to live together because this is our destiny. And you speak about 2 years ago, but this is not the first time that happened. We under occupation since 78 years ago. So it didn't happen because of the 7th of October. 7th of October is a reason of this occupation. It's not I justify what happened in that day, but this is continuous. Now we spoke about the ceasefire, but Israel, if you look to the news, every day they attack the Gaza Strip. Yesterday and this morning, they bombed the houses full of refugees. They didn't stop, but we believe this will end one day, and we can't just sit aside and watch. We believe in reconciliation. We believe that one day this will end, and our responsibility for our people is try to do our best to end this. Who can believe that there will be a German ambassador in Israel or there will be an Israeli ambassador in Germany? But that happened, so we believe this will happen too here.
Xavier, I've only got a minute left, but much of the attention is now focused on what happens next in Gaza. There was this plan that was approved by the United Nations, what the United States calls a peace plan. Where do you see it going?
Well, I have to say that this is a disgraceful plan, and in fact, I could not even call it a peace plan. But someone who has participated in peace negotiations and studied peace processes myself, I've never seen something like this be referred to as a peace plan, basically because it lacks the very principles, including being aligned with international law. I would say that it's very uncertain what's going to happen now in Gaza, but I do believe that this resolution sets very negative precedents for Palestine, including not just by adding the President Trump's annexation plan of 2020 to a Security Council resolution as a framework for a solution, but also by separating Gaza from the rest of Palestine and setting a different legal and political status in Gaza. I think it's a big problem that we are in now, and I don't know how it's going to be dealt with.
Okay, and that's where we have to leave it. Thanks to both of you for being with us. And that is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington.